Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and today I have the host of the Golf 360 podcast, the founder of the golfparadigm.com, and good friend at this point, Pete Popovich. Pete, I am so excited to be on this side of the mic with you. The first time we met, I was on the other side.
That's right. It's good to flip and experience the perspective of the other side once in a while.
Yeah, man. No, it was an honor to be on your podcast. I'm just going to start off. If everyone listening, you got to go check it out, the Golf 360 podcast. It's the list of guests is impressive, and obviously I want to cover some of the. I think one of the cool things of what you've done with your pod is the just sheer spectrum of experts that you've been able to talk to in the field of golf, and from the fitness side to the stats side to the instructional side. I mean, it's impressive. But I think one of the big things that we kind of hit it off on when we were chatting was just the idea that the one size fits all kind of golf training just doesn't work, and there's lots of reasons why. But I'm just curious, just kind of to start off, like with your experience in just talking to all of the experts in the field, that it sounds like that's been kind of a common theme that you've run across.
Yeah, that was a theory I had going back to prior to starting the podcast. That was the idea was roughly 8-9 years ago, and technology had already had itself planted pretty good, and everyone was adapting to it and learning how to use it and doing some very good things. But what I saw was trying to put people in boxes or silos prior to technology was further enhanced by the technology. Mm-hmm. In other words, people who were using teaching methods or teaching theories, and maybe they had success with a certain number of people, that they would double down because now they had more explanation. And the bigger issue I see with the use of not just technology but science in general is, at what particular point in time does any science take precedence over the other one? So, for example, at what point does biomechanics take precedence over physics, or neuroscience take precedence over biomechanics? Mm-hmm. And I think with the amount of data we have, that the people who are reviewing this and coming up with their theories, and some very smart people in golf and fitness and everything else that we deal with, I think that will be the next level, is identifying per the individual certain characteristics that will gravitate them in parts of their game or their physical fitness towards doing certain things that might work better than other things.
Yeah. And are you seeing that across, like, not just physical side, but obviously you talk, you had Scott Fawcett on, from a data perspective and course management. You've had obviously some of the top instructors on from an instructional standpoint. Are you seeing that trend, or do you see that kind of that vector being followed by all the different areas of the game?
I think so, and I think Scott's work is very, very, very good. But I also I asked Scott on one of the episodes he was on, because I have a very good friend who has a master's in mathematics. He's a teacher at a high school as well, and I said, well, I always ask him if he loves his wife, and he said, well, of course I do. What kind of stupid question is that? Yeah. And then the follow-up was, well, how do you know if you can't quantify it? or how do you quantify it with mathematics? Yeah. And my buddy gets stumped. Now, Scott came back and said, I'm sure there's a mathematical formula you could figure it out. But my point is, there is more to things than just mathematics or measurement, because measurement, we can only measure what's already being done. We don't know, and then we can get the result. My analogy was always the MRI. You could get an MRI and it could tell you exactly what's wrong, but if the person reading it doesn't know what they're looking at, or they're looking at the wrong thing, interpreting it the wrong way, it's not going to do the individual a whole lot of good.
Right. Yeah, and it was interesting. I mean, to your point, I had Lou Stagner, the other stats guy, on a little while ago, and he, to your point, the mathematics, saying, like, yes, there's a mathematical best shot, kind of based on your yardage, and but if you're the belief of, like, if you're playing well and you're in the groove, you probably are leaving strokes out there if you don't go at certain pins. And if you're playing poorly, you probably shouldn't be going after certain pins. And unfortunately in golf, we tend to do the opposite. When you're playing poorly, you try to chase, and when you're playing well, you play conservative sometimes.
That's kind of the where I mean, like, where does the mental or the psychological take precedence over the stats in this instance? So, like, to your example, if you're playing poorly, let's just say your timing, your rhythm, your sequencing, something in your mechanics is off for whatever reason. You could have gotten an argument with your spouse that morning, or your kids, or your neighbor, whatever, and you get thrown off. But if you start, let's say you start aiming at the middle of the green instead of firing at pins, the pressure internally is mental pressure is taken off, because now you're hitting to a bigger target. And maybe if you're a better player, you think, okay, this is easier than hitting to a quadrant. So maybe you start to relax, you get back in rhythm because there's not as much, you're not putting as much pressure on yourself. Now you start hitting it more solid. Now maybe you start shifting your aim. So I think there is room for both ideas or theories or disciplines, however you want to phrase it. Just when should they be applied? And I think the better the player, they know how to understand that. And I mean, Scheffler's a prime example. I mean, watching him this week, he didn't have his A game the front nine, didn't have his A game the first round or two, but he had his A game for the third round. It was pretty impressive. But when he didn't, he knew how to manage himself and get it back to where he got that final nine. He played pretty darn good to kind of. Yeah,
I would say he stepped on a couple throats on the back nine, to say the least. So like circling back to the physical side, I know you've had Stu McGill on, one of the absolute, at the forefront of particularly back issues and just biomechanics, and particularly in relation to the back, but overall. What were some of the takeaways along this lines of the workouts or swings or just physical health, particularly around the back and spine, that you took away for him in terms of making sure that you're doing the right stuff for you and not just, hey, I saw Rory doing this or Scotty doing this, and so I should do that?
Yeah, there were really three key takeaways that I got from spending a day with him. One was,
and super jealous of that, by the way.
Yeah.
And everyone listening, you should be like very jealous of Pete. That is a bucket list day.
I know, and I took full advantage of it. I mean, when he said, after we got done and we were talking, because we were at his condo, he said, well, if you have your MRI, if you want to bring it back tomorrow, I'll take a look at it for you. I mean, it's like, are you serious?
That's like Tiger Woods being like, hey, if you got your swing you want to bring over, I could spend the day like teaching you how to play better. Actually, no, you know what? I'm busy tomorrow. I can't make it. Like, heck yeah, I'll be there.
You win your local or state lottery, and then you say, what the hell, I'll buy a Powerball, and you look at that, and then you hit that one again. You're like, wait a minute, no. So yeah, that was I was walking on cloud nine for a few days after those things. But that for me, there were three big key takeaways. One, that you have to have at least an X-ray done, and you have to have somebody who knows what they're looking at. But the facet joints, how much room is between an individual's facet joints? Because if you don't know that you have either narrowing of the space or wide space, wide meaning you can turn almost, you're gifted from mom and dad that you can turn it big a turn as you want to, and it's not going to impinge anything. If you're narrower, you're going to have to work on hip mobility a lot more. Yeah. For somebody to not know that and go out and maybe they're going to work with a coach who's they're a big shoulder turner, they're a big spinal engine type guy, that might really work in their detriment to cause injury further down the line. The other one was that he's often misunderstood in that he is not against deadlifts, squats, Olympic lifts, things, heavy lifting in general, things of that nature, if that is what the individual needs. So, if that's their big gaping hole of what they're lacking, they're weak, they're not strong enough, hold position, the joint has too much mobility, etc., then he's by all means, if that's the fix or that's the cure, then he's going to prescribe it. And then the last one was, which I'm still bouncing in my head, and I don't know why. I mean, he is obviously a legend. But I think we touched on this a little bit, and I've talked about this with Ben Shear as well. Is an individual, are they more elastic type or are they more force type? Meaning, are they Bryson, Brooks, John Rahm, where they can get in the gym and they can start doing, 250, 350, 450. Like you said, was it 75%?
1.75 times
1.75 body weight.
Exactly. Yep.
And then you've got a Joaquin Neiman, who I think if he tried to do
he ain't doing 1.75 times body weight.
and if he did, and if he tried to do that, it appears that there would be a chance that it would work against him. So identifying or knowing the type of person you have in front of you, instead, again, just going back to this model that somebody might have learned, and it might be correct, but it might not be for everybody. So, I notice you and Ben, Dan Hellman, Doc Stu, as people know more, they're able to identify these things faster, better, more efficiently, as opposed to your nephew or your niece might have gone to TPI, got their degree from XYZ University, and they're very good, and they're 25 years old and they're very smart, but they don't know. They have knowledge, they don't have the wisdom, I guess, as I say it.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, that always, it's the more experience somebody has, the quicker they become at recognizing patterns, just the pattern recognition and identifying. I use the analogy of he's 18, 19, he's at the University of North Carolina, great player. When he was 14, it was very apparent he was to use your words, a force guy. Like, he was creating his speed because his thighs are tree trunks. Actually, his mother was in here the other day. We were doing some stuff with helping her out, and she's joking how she makes fun of him of, like, his thighs are massive and his calves look like, beanstalks. And she's like, I have bigger calves than you do. And so I was joking with her, and I was like, well, that's because he literally has zero elasticity. And it's not common that with at a 14, 15-year-old that you're like, hey, you're strong enough. What we're actually going to do is we're working on getting you more explosive. And so his program actually, in a lot of ways, was similar to more of what we would give like a 50-year-old or a 55-year-old, because it was, hey, you're like, strength-wise, you're good. Like, we just need to maintain this for the next 30, 40 years during your career. What we really, the low-hanging fruit, the gaping hole opportunity for you is your elastic utilization ratio, which, if you look at, easy way to explain that would be, if you're doing like a vertical leap test. So everyone thinks of the NFL combine where the guys kind of dip down, they jump up as high as they can to smack the little, whatever you call them, spinny things. And so that, like, when they can dip down and jump, that's elastic. Versus if you had them dip and then hold it for like 5 seconds and then just go straight from the bottom, where they couldn't have that kind of elastic stretch dip. He jumps exactly the same height from both of those.
Wow.
Most guys will jump a lot higher when they can start standing, dip down, and go explosive.
Yeah, you use the energy.
Exactly.
He's not storing it because it doesn't have elasticity.
Exactly, and that's what you typically will see in the 50-plus crowd, is that all of their speed comes from force, and they're not using elastic bands, and when they try to, things break. But he's, to me, probably the biggest example at the highest level that I've seen, and at the earliest stage where it was, hey, it's very clear the one size fits all doesn't fit here, and we actually are gonna. I always joke with him. He was like 16 going on 40 mentally, just so mature. And I'd be like, hey man, your body's kind of like your brain, so we're gonna, while you think like a 50-year-old, we're also gonna train you like a 50-year-old, and it's just, we give him a hard time for that. But on that note of the kind of needing to train differently based on where people are at. I know you've spent a lot of time with Ben, a mutual friend of ours. What have been some of the takeaways that you've taken from him on the training side, in terms of the types of things people should be doing? And I'm sure you've taken more than one nugget of wisdom from him.
Yes, I probably bugged the hell out of him, and especially a couple months ago when over the last couple of years, I really irritated my shoulder in multiple ways, doing things that I shouldn't do, especially as a 52-year-old. But I can get back to this. Yeah. No, you can't.
Mentally, I'm still 25.
Yes. Things like, and I had seen it. A number of friends of mine, a couple of trainers in Charleston. Well, now he's moved to Montana. Had the flywheel, and I know Ben's very big on that for the eccentric loading in particular. And my best understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the eccentric is usually where the slowing down occurs. Or in the golf swing, the lead target side would be the lead side for me. Any right-hander, it's your left side. So that's I always tell golfers that's doing the catching. So everything's coming in, your whole right side's turning into your left, and your left's got to catch it. And it's got to catch it while it's moving, and it's moving as fast and as force of application and everything else. If it's not strong enough, it's going to break because has to catch all this stuff. So the eccentric portion of the movement, I find the flywheel very interesting, where it's the continual movement. I haven't used it. I tried them once. There's no one that I know in our area that has them, so I bugged.
We got to get you. We got to get you. Eccentric has a home unit they can send. We got to get you connected with them. They have the K pulley. It's basically you can just mount it to a wall anywhere, like garage or anywhere, and it's awesome.
As cool as the Hilton Head area is, it's not very leading the pack when it comes to technology or other things. It's very, it's a small area, quaint, beautiful.
To be fair, you're hard pressed to find a gym that has a flywheel. I'm very confident we are the only gym in the Triangle that has. never mind like 3 flywheels, but like at least just one. It's a weird or non-mainstream tool, right? And it's definitely.
Do you find that athletes who are already like established, like really good junior level, high school, college, and then pros are more that they seem to benefit from it? Like that's their gaping hole because they've done the flexibility, mobility, strength training. That's been the kind of the traditional, and the flywheel just hasn't gotten out there more. And maybe that's kind of utilizing that for how it works and the things that it develops.
Yeah, I would say in golf, the overwhelming majority of the guys and girls, and even in college, just basic strength training is good enough for most of them. Like they're not that advanced. And now I think then you layer on top of that the lack of access to a flywheel. If they, obviously they're on the road a lot, particularly the professional side. But the average gym, the YMCA's, I mean, they don't have flywheels, right? The Planet Fitnesses, those sorts of things. So, it's just not known because it's just not available. B, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit for those people, generally speaking, anyway. I mean, Kyle Berkshire walked in here with 2 world championship belts, had never used a flywheel, also just had terrible mobility. And like there was like so many other like things where it was like we spent 4 weeks just getting his mobility and like tissue good, and then he had already done, for example, I'll use Kyle's example, he had already done all the strength side of things just because he enjoys kind of bodybuilding type workouts, so he knew how to squat and deadlift and all that sort of stuff. But he was an example where he'd never used a flywheel. Right, and we know from the research that's how Ben and I became really good friends, as we started doing our own research on the flywheels. And I was like, hey, man, are you seeing 150% increase relative to just general rotary stuff with this? And he's like, yep, let's talk. So, I think there is a point for a lot of golfers where the flywheel is something they haven't tried. I was encouraged, all of our amateurs use it. It's like, why would you use bands when you could use that? And I think now that you have companies like Eccentric and there's other companies out there that have kind of units where you can get it home, obviously now it becomes more accessible for sure.
I usually say things that the general masses of an industry will find offensive, for lack of a better, not grossly offensive, but like in today's world, but like bands. I was never a proponent of bands, and I think that's because when I got started in learning about training, it was. At first, I went very deep into the Czech system, Paul Czech.
Yeah.
And then
most people don't go, in all fairness. So you already are in the top 2% there.
and then just from watching Charles, Paul's stuff, I was getting towards everything I could find on it, and I bugged friends that had gone, their level 1, 2, 3 golf. They got all of them. I say, hey, can I read your material? Can I see your video? Whatever you have, sure. But then through that, Charles Poliquin and Paul years ago were very close. And so I watched Charles do a lecture on periodization and training. So I got big into Charles's information, and I didn't take his classes. I didn't go pay. I just stole what I could from friends. and that was how I got the connection with Preston Green. Preston's phenomenal, but that's a long way to say I was never a big proponent of bands. For various reasons, and why I like the flywheel a lot better. And I had always said cables are way better than bands.
Yeah, I mean it's all different resistance, right? I think you have bands, just for everyone who doesn't know the difference. Bands are variable resistance, right? The farther out you pull,
curve, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's places for every tool at different times and different places. You know, I think it as a rehab kind of activation, just trying to get a feel of it and getting movement patterns down. You know, as a warm up, implement to get the nervous system firing. Sure, but yeah, in terms of like truly building strength, I've never seen anyone get. Yeah, they're certainly not getting to 1.75 times body weight deadlifts with bands, right? Right. Now, I'll see people use like heavy bands for throwing them on the end of barbells to and using that in those sorts of manners. But the people who are like, hey, I got bands and like I'm good. You're like, yeah, sure, good, okay.
I follow a guy, Tom Hovland. Do you know him? I think
I don't know him. No.
He was a special forces guy and learned about training, and so he has his own page. I'll text it to you or send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But when you brought up bands on the end of barbells, he's got one video I saw the other day where he's doing around a 400-pound squat, and he's got the heavy bands on both sides of the. Like, this guy, and he's huge. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, you do that. You do chains. You got
double heavy bands.
Oh yeah. There's that's a whole tunnel to go down. But the you had a very cool tweet that I wanted to bring up and just kind of get deeper. The kind of your thoughts on it. You said the best golfers don't reinvent the wheel; they learn from the best minds in coaching, fitness, and equipment. Surround yourself with experts and steal their secrets. Speaking of stealing, you were just talking about it. I love that. Where did this come from? Like, and how has that evolved as you've been doing this longer? And how would you kind of expand on that for everyone?
Well, I think the basis of it was you'll see somebody that's usually, again, I'm an older guy now, so I'm not trying to beat up on the younger ones because I was there and I did these exact things. But you learn something when you're younger meaning, let's say 30 and under. And you think that, man, no one else is talking about this.
Yeah.
And I'm reinventing the wheel. And next, you go long enough and you're like, oh shit, these guys were doing this 25 years ago, and I'm not reinventing anything. So humanity's been around a long time. Golf's been around a long time. Obviously, training, sports specific training has been around a decent amount of time compared to the other ones. But I don't think that taking the inordinate amount of time to try to reinvent something or dig deep just on your own can be a very big waste of time, when if you can find the right people who are experts at what they do and go learn from them, that you can make your life so much more efficient. And I know you mentioned Greg Norman's name. Some people might, oh Jesus, but I mean, when Greg Norman was on Faraday years ago on the Golf Channel, I remember Faraday had that show. He would go interview guys. And
miss him.
I think one of the things David asked him was, yes, if you could change anything, what would you do? And he said, I would have asked for help more often than trying to do it myself. And I think that if you listen to enough, or you're able to dig deep enough with a lot of very high performers at some point who were very that they want to do it on their own, that a lot of them had that same thought, is like, why didn't I go seek out somebody that wasn't very good at what I wanted to do and learn from them, as opposed to trying to figure it all out myself. I mean, it's very noble to say that use Ben Hogan's term, dig it out of the dirt.
Yeah. But
if you're a golfer in today's world and you're trying to self-teach just by watching YouTube or anything else, and you want to play at an exceptionally high level, guess what? It's the chances of that happening are exceptionally small nowadays. Boo Weekley said that. Boo and I are friends, and when he got his tour card in 2001 at Q School, and his first year on tour, at the end of, I think midway through the end of it, someone asked him, he said, are there guys like you kind of just learned golf and just got better by playing? Is that possible in today's world? And he said, no, not with the amount of coaching, technology, expertise in all different fields. It's all separated now. Obviously, you guys, Par 4 Success, have the expertise and the mobility, the flexibility, the strength, all the work that you've done and can really fine tune somebody. All the difference in coaches and how you can swing for you. Why would you go through trial and error? You could go 20 years and never reach the level you should have reached because you were just spinning your wheels.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's so on point. I think one of my most just concrete examples was I was talking with Carl and Dennis Paulson from Inside the Ropes on XM Radio, and they were basically talking. They used to play on tour, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, the biggest difference now is when we were hitting the ball poorly, we went out and we dug dirt for like 3 to 6 hours until we just figured it out. He goes, the guys on tour now, they go out with 3 launch monitors and they take 15 swings and they know what's wrong. Yep. he goes, and so I think it's the feedback loop, to your point, of the more we can shorten feedback loops, I'm a huge proponent. If I can go pay somebody to learn from their 10 or 20 years of struggle and learning and accelerate how quickly I can get to wherever I'm trying to get to, golf, business, fitness, whatever it may be, I will do that 100 times out of 100 times. And to your point, I think that's something that a lot of people sometimes have a tough time maybe swallowing pride or just not knowing who those people are, to go do that. And, with that in mind, like I'd be curious, like, I don't know if we broke it into like a couple categories of maybe like the instructional side, the fitness side, and then maybe the just playability, like things like Scott fought, course management. What would be like one thing in each of the categories? And if there's more that you have in mind, by all means, let them rip. But one of the top things in each of those kind of areas for golfers that like you maybe even weren't even aware of, or thought you knew, you were like, yeah, I know, and then you just mind got blown up. You're like, oh wow, okay, well, I trust that guy.
Well, obviously Mike Adams, he's widely known as the godfather of golf instruction, very influential. His interior rolls biomechanics system, I think, is on the right track. Whether somebody agrees with it or not, I mean, I've talked to many very high-level coaches in private that said that they don't believe it or that they think there's faults in it. Mm-hmm. I think E.A. Tischler's, who I've had on, and I got to spend some time with E.A. when my cousin owns a golf course about a mile down the road from Olympia, where E.A. is. So when I was up there last summer, I got to spend a day with him. And I know, I'm not knocking Mike's or Terry's. I just got to spend time with EA, so I know it a little better. I think it's more detailed and it allows for more variability than the one that Mike is utilizing. Yeah. And I know that EA and Mike had partnered at one time and just that they separated, and I don't know why, and that's not any of my business. I don't think it's anybody's except theirs. But to answer your question, I think getting a better understanding of how things apply per the individual. I think and maybe I was biased because I had that. That has been a theory of mine for a very long time, going way back to in our area, because I've been in Hilton Head about 33 years. Yeah. Jack Lumpkin was the guy, because he's Sea Island, it's 2 hours away. So we used to go down and see Jack, and it after going down there enough times and either getting a lesson or observing with friends, it seemed, and this is not a knock on Jack, but it seemed like most of the instruction geared around stronger lead hand, rotate through, square the face with the body rotation, have less, let's say it hands, we'll call it, less handsy swing. And in my own mind, I was just 23 years old, so who am I to ask Jack Lumpkin? This guy. I said, I wanted to ask him, why would you teach me that, and why would you teach this other guy that? We don't hit the ball anywhere the same. We're not built anywhere near the same. I'm 6'5", he's 5'9", right, et cetera. And those are the questions in my mind. So maybe that when I found people who would come up with systems that identified, here's at least a scratch on the surface how we can figure out what you are and how you move from a biomechanics perspective, that seemed to appeal to me, or I could hear the music, I guess is an easy way to understand it. Sure. You're not just listening, you can hear the music at that point. For sure.
So, well, what about the, I'm obviously a stats guy, I love stats, so very curious, from your conversations on course management and just, or like selecting, how to gain shots wherever you possibly can. It was anything or multiple things in that realm that have been kind of eye-opening for you over the years?
This is going to sound, I don't mean to sound pompous, but Scott and I discussed this faucet when he was on. And I said, when he told me that why it was called Decade, I said it makes total sense because it took me about 10 years to self-teach myself something very similar. Now, I'm not a mathematics person by any means. I was pretty good at math, but not anywhere near his level. Yeah. But just through, I grew up caddying. I started caddying when I was 12 years old, and just playing. And then when I went to play professionally, I didn't have a whole lot of money, so I knew I had to shoot the best score I could without costing myself, without firing at pins. Yeah. And guys used to sit there on the chipping green, practice short-sided shots all the time. Like, you might hit that shot once every other round or once every 3 rounds. Why are you spending hours on this shot? Just to me, it just didn't ring true.
Yeah.
Now, to my detriment, I took it too conservative. I would aim middle of the green or between the middle and the edge somewhere, and then aim at that spot. But so maybe that was my downfall. I wasn't maybe aggressive enough, which Scott says you would be in the select few. But forgot where I was going with that. But as far as course management, Stuart Morgan is doing his doctorate in. I'm going to get this wrong. Stuart here is he going to call me and message me and say, "You dumbass." But it's something in the brain and how we learn and things of that nature. Not pedagogy, but something along the lines of educational and learning, and has talked to a lot of very, very smart people throughout Europe and the world. And there are times, to your point, when, yes, you should take the mathematical approach and hit here, but there are how do you differentiate? And I think that's where Stuart's going with his book and his doctorate, is how do you know when you should fire the pin? You would never change above a Watson or Phil Mickelson. If you did, you would short circuit that entire system and they'd lose their genius. Yeah. And I think that for us older guys, I think the glaring example of that might have been Seve.
Yeah.
Seve was total creativity, and nothing against Mac O'Grady. I think he did great work. But when Seve got with Mac and he tried to make him very mechanical, maybe I'm not saying he did, but he seemed to have lost a lot of what made him great.
His pizzazz, yeah.
So I'm not sure if that answers your questions. I hope it does to some extent.
Yeah, no, it does 100%. And I think when thinking about I think that's one of the coolest things I love about your podcast is just all the different people you have on and the different perspectives you get. And
I think it's a cool thing. I think it's a downfall because it's so broad. It's like doesn't appeal to like one group that can all say, "Hey, we're going to go listen to this."
I mean, basically, it's like you could put all them in. It's like a master class of like its own channel of master class. Where it's like, who do you want to learn from today? Which top expert?
Maybe I should change it to golf master class.
Well, by all means, take it. It's yours.
But along these lines, James Lights had a very interesting comment when he was on last. He said, "Great golfers." What was his exact word? Great golfers follow laws that they don't even know exist. So the physics of ball club face interaction, that they know, like, and Carlos Franco was his example. He was a complete field player, but when he lost his field, he had no idea how to get it back. And now, how do you take a guy who's been very abstract in his approach in life, and now he's lost it? How do you teach him to be more analytical in his approach or his understanding, and then allow him to do it? Now, you're talking about someone that might be in their 30s, early 40s. Now, what's their learning capability to change after they've done something the same way their entire life? It makes it very difficult.
Very cool. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here, because I know you're a busy man. But I did have one question that I always love to ask other podcasters when I have them on. But yours in particular, just because you have such a vast number of interviews and just different people you've had on. I mean, for you personally, 'cause I know I'm always selfish, and anytime I have an instructor on, or when I had Lou Stagner on, I was totally just asking. I literally asked him a question about the handicap system to help me in an argument against my buddies. But
that's where a lot of my questions come from.
Yeah. But for you, I mean, have you had somebody that like favorite interview or most impactful interview? For people listening, that you're like, hey, if you're gonna you could only listen to one episode of Golf 360. Which one would you drive them to?
That's because of this show, like you said, is so vast. It's kind of hard to nail it down. And
feel free to break it up if it's like by handicap or by interest, or
if I broke it up into the in my own theory that I created was going to be my master's thesis, and then said screw with that. I'm not writing a book and taking multiple years. I'm going to do a podcast. Is much inefficient. The mechanical side, so the swing side, the mental side, the club side, the body side, and the integration is kind of no one really, we don't talk about that, but the swing side, between Manzella and Jacobs and Sean Foley, and that's hard to pick just one. I had Brian on more, so I probably got a lot out of from Brian. Yeah. Just because he is very smart, and the research and the study that they've done, it's very interesting to me to listen to it. And Brian knows I'm not pushing him, and I'm not teaching what he teaches all the time, but I think we improve as coaches. that you pick up things from certain people, or at least a way to say it, and once you understand where to utilize it, then it really becomes something that when and how and can use to your and your students' advantage. Obviously, the fitness side, I think, as we talk, having Stu on, just the icon that he is it's going to be hard to put anyone above him for that. From a business perspective, the guy, he was a mentor and coach of mine when I played basketball growing up. Randy Soma, he was a chief executive at Johnson Controls, was a Fortune 50 company. So we really talked about how you create culture, how you develop trust in an organization. I think they had something along the lines of 50,000 employees. Wow. Maybe more. I don't know. It's a Fortune 100 company. They're huge. $20 billion a year business. That one. The mental side, Dr. Pryor and Doc McCabe have been the two. So it's hard you could toss a coin, in my opinion, between those two. So I'm really not giving you a good answer because there's
you're giving lots of options for people.
There's so many to pick from.
That was the goal of the question. Yeah.
I guess it's whatever the person is who's going to listen that they're searching for. Then each one. I try not to talk about the same thing.
Right.
I try not to talk about with Michael Finney as I do with Brian Manziel. Obviously, they might not agree, but I try not to talk on the same topics.
For sure.
With other guests.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who wants to follow, obviously you got to check out the podcast Golf 360. But if they want to follow you, social, they want to message you directly and say, "Hey Pete, which one should I listen to? What's the best way for them to connect with you?"
Instagram's probably the most. We're small in followers. In fact, I messaged Derek Dominski today because they shut his page down 10 years ago.
Oh, really?
They shut ours down after 2, and we, for some false pretense reason, we try getting it back, and it's. I don't even think it's possible. So I hope Derek gets his back. The amount of work he put in. But Instagram is probably the easiest way to see, and we have clips all the time. Facebook as well. They're all under different tags because we couldn't get Golf 360 podcast on each one. But if you Google Golf 360 podcast, I hope it pops up on the first page.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure
we're pretty easy to find. Obviously on X as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure Caleb, our podcast director, gets all those in the show notes for everybody listening, so you guys can easily find Pete and what all the great work he's doing on Golf 360. But Pete, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honor having you on. It's been fun. Flipping on the different side of the mic, and we'll look forward to having you on soon again, I'm sure.
I'd love to do it. Anytime you need someone to fill in space, I'll be there.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me here on the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad, and we'll catch you on the next episode.